Well, good afternoon, morning, or evening, wherever we're catching you from. Today is another Wednesday, and geez, it's amazing how fast time goes by. And it's another wonderful, wonderful episode that we have here. And I'm really excited today because we have a really special guest for you all. Nicole, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. And you know what? I'm so glad we chose to do this on a Wednesday because that's that midweek where everybody's like, oh, are we going to make it? And for me, I look forward to Wednesdays. They're exciting. We have these awesome guests and, it's like you blink and it's Wednesday again. So here we are with another amazing guest this week.
I know. So please tell everybody, who do we have scheduled in for today?
Okay, we have a really special guest today. His name is David Medansky, and he is known as the Diet Contrarian. And you will soon find out why. It's a great, great story. But at age 61, David went to the doctor and he was told he had a 95% chance of having a heart attack.
Wow.
Those are not good odds. Those are not good odds. His doctor actually told him to go get a new doctor because he didn't think David could do it. So obviously the doctor did not know him very well. In 4 months, he lost 50 pounds and shed 25% of his body weight. And that absolutely just amazes me. That's really incredible. He is an author who's written several books. The one I have right here with me right now is Break the Chains of Dieting, which I've read and enjoyed. And I just want to read a few of the names that gave David testimonials. We have got Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup from the Soul, Dean Cain, Superman, Chris Harrison, The Bachelor, Kevin Harrington, Shark Tank, and our own Forbes Riley, creator of the Spin Gym and a spokesperson. So that's not even the most impressive part. At 67, Dave hiked Mount Kilimanjaro, and he's here to tell the tale. So with that, I say we welcome him to the stage and get started.
Yes, let's get this party started. Hello, David. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're all excited to hear about everything that's going on in your life. It's been a while.
Thank you, Glenda. Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate being here as a guest.
Oh, great to have you.
So where do we begin? You have so much to talk about for us, so we can let's start with your story about how your books came into being, because that's where you have a major shift in your entire life.
Absolutely. What most people may not realize is I'm a former divorce lawyer, and I'm also a world-class expert at playing casino craps. Ooh. And I've written several books on that. I stopped practicing divorce law in 2005. And as Nicole mentioned, in July of 2016, at age 61, my doctor told me that based on my lab results and being fat, I had a 95% chance for a fatal heart attack.
Wow.
And he gave me two options. He said, dude, either lose weight or find a new doctor. And he strongly encouraged me to find a new doctor because he had been after me for 8 years to lose the weight. I was embarrassed. However, this time the light bulb went off. And during the next 4 months, as Nicole mentioned, I shed 50 pounds, 25% of my total body weight. More importantly, I kept the weight off. And I learned how to lose the weight without going on a diet, without exercising, without counting calories, and without having to buy special meals, products, or supplements. And I was at an Author 101 meeting when I was working on a novel. And one of the guest speakers was talking about writing a book. And so he says, write 10 questions about what you're an expert at. And then write down 10 questions that people should ask you that you're an expert at. Well, I wrote about craps because that's what I'm familiar with. And I threw my pen down because I didn't want to write another book about craps. The next speaker got up and started talking about weight loss. And he said he lost 100 pounds during the last year. And I was on my weight loss journey at that time. So I thought, oh, maybe I should write about weight loss in my journey. And that's how I got started writing the books. The first book was Discover Your Thinner Self. The second book was If Not Now, When? And the third book, as Nicole mentioned, is Break the Chains of Dieting. And then I have another one coming out soon called Stop Dieting, Start Thinning.
Wow.
That's amazing. I'm curious, when that doctor told you that, a 95% chance of having a fatal heart attack, and then told you to go get another doctor. You need another doctor. What kind of feeling was that? I mean, that would scare me to death.
As I said, I was embarrassed. I had attempted every diet imaginable. And if I did lose weight on a diet, I was unable to keep it off. Sometimes I gained more weight back than what I had initially lost. And what I realized in doing research for the books is diets don't work. They're temporary, extreme, hard to stick with, and a lot of them are potentially dangerous to our health. So I went back and started reading the books from the 1970s. Paul Bragg and Patricia Bragg, Richard Simmons, Jack LaLanne, and other people, William Duffy's Sugar Blues. And what I realized is those authors were talking about basics and how to eat healthy and lifestyle. And then I started reading current books by current authors. And what I realized is those authors were pushing programs and products and supplements. And it made it sound like if you didn't purchase their program or product that you were going to fail in your weight loss journey. And so I started putting two together and realized that the weight loss industry is a racket. And the reason I say that is when I started my weight loss journey, it was $61 billion a year industry. Today, weight loss is a $76 billion a year industry. People are getting fatter and heavier. And the average person will attempt 4 to 5 new diets each year. Well, if diets worked and those weight loss programs work, why is it that the average person will attempt 4 to 5 new diets each year? So what I advocate is not going on a diet. It's changing your lifestyle. And that's what I tell people. If you want to lose weight, never go on a diet. Go and change your lifestyle and eating habits and change your life.
That makes so much sense because it just made me think growing up or my teens, my mom was always on a diet, always on the best, next, newest, you name it, she was on it. She would drop some weight and then she'd gain more. So it almost seems like the diet industry is almost sabotaging you to buy the next thing that comes along.
Exactly, because if the diets work, most of those companies would be out of business after a few years and we'd all be thinner and healthier.
Yeah, it's like they don't want us thin and healthy. There's a lot of money to be made on overweight people. And it's very scary to me.
And it's true. And it's very sad to see what's happening. We used to say us in Canada, I'm a fellow Canadian here, how, it was always the US who were the heaviest people. And I can tell you, just watching what's happening in our own city, it's really sad of seeing how the younger generation is now growing in the wrong direction. And it saddens my heart. And I understand it is a life change. And, it's also a mindset change. So did you find that you went through a different mindset to begin with? Because, it's not just losing the weight that's the hardest part, because trust me, my whole life has been about dieting and not really dieting. I came from another world. But, it's easy to lose the weight, but the hardest part is to keep it off. And
mindset is the most important thing. And
right.
I had to change my attitude about food. Most people look at food for comfort, to relieve stress, for socializing and enjoyment. Rarely does anybody look at food and think of it as fuel for your body. And that's how I changed my mindset of saying, okay, my body is an incredible machine. I want to give it the right fuel. So that's where I started making choices. Do I want to eat the donut or do I want to eat the apple? Do I want to eat something that's healthy or do I want to eat something that's giving me comfort? So I had to delve into my issues and, the underlying issues. Well, why is it that I know what to do, I'm not doing it? And that's what I started figuring out, is that mindset is very important. And a lot of people don't realize they have underlying issues that need to be resolved, because most of us know what to do to lose weight and eat healthy. We just don't do it. And that's the $64,000 question, is why is it so difficult to lose the weight? And more importantly, why is it so difficult to keep it off? So that's what I get into in working with people, is to build healthy habits that people will work for them, habits that will make them feel good, and habits that actually last.
Beautiful. And I know you speak worldwide now. You've been on speaking for people, but do you coach one-on-one? I've never asked you that question before.
I do coach one-on-one and have a program, and people can reach out to me if they want.
Okay. And it's interesting that you say you have to find out, like, maybe the trigger of why you're eating that or why you're binging. Did you learn things about yourself that you maybe didn't know or you had kept hidden from yourself in terms of why you eat?
Yes, a lot of it was just convenience. I used to think that overeating was because of stress.
Mhm.
However, I was listening to a medical doctor and he said it's convenience. It's easier to go through the McDonald's fast food. It's the drive-through. It's easier to pick up a bucket of KFC chicken or order a pizza or buy a frozen meal and throw it in the microwave. We got lazy as we got older. There's more conveniences. So I just figured I'd take the time to buy the fresh produce and prepare the meals. And I also found that by doing it that way, I saved money. So that's a myth that eating healthy costs more. I also enjoy the food more. And then I also had to learn to slow down because I was a very fast eater. And so I learned to eat slow. And I also learned that our food portions have been supersized without us realizing it. In the 1900s, the average size dinner plate was 9 inches in diameter. Today, it's 12 inches. In restaurants, it's 13 to 15 inches. Yet in Europe, it's still 9 inches in diameter. And it's an illusion. It's an optical illusion. It's called the Delboeuf illusion. And what they did was they took two plates, a salad plate and a dinner size plate, and they had people give the exact same amount of food on the plates. And people who got the salad plate thought they were getting more food, and people who got the dinner plate thought they were getting less food. So that shows that, when we use a dinner size plate, we have it reversed. We should use a salad plate instead of a dinner size plate.
Yeah, I used to do that years ago, and it is a wonderful idea. And also the idea is, if you look at countries like France, who actually have a very rich palate, and there's very little people in France that are overweight, and it's why, because they eat very small amounts, but they enjoy that amount. So being able to slow down and actually taste your food and just, you get fuller faster on it.
Exactly. And Mark David wrote a book called The Slow Down Diet. And in there, he says, if you take 5 minutes for breakfast, give yourself 10. And on a minimum, give yourself 30 minutes for lunch and 30 minutes for dinner. I mean, how often are we working at our desk, at our computers, and we look down and the sandwich is gone? Or you're watching TV and the bag of chips or pretzels or cookies or whatever you're snacking on is gone. It's like, well, where did it go? Well, I call that mindless eating because you're not focusing on the food you're putting in your mouth. You're focusing on what you're doing. So I tell people to focus on food when they're eating and put everything else to a side. And then you start realizing that you're eating faster. So now you can learn how to slow down your eating habits and you can enjoy the food, as Glenda mentioned.
Yeah. And, Glenda mentioned something else. She said about in the United States, we seem to have heavier people than in other places. Why do you think that is? What's the answer to that?
It's the food industry's marketing. They pay the psychologists and marketing experts millions and millions of dollars to manipulate the public into buying their products. For example, if you look at a can of tuna, on the front it may say packed in water. However, if you turn it over and look at the ingredients, it'll say tuna, water, vegetable broth, and maybe sea salt. Well, what's in that vegetable broth? Well, there can be 168 different compounds in that vegetable broth. So that means it's chemicals that you don't know what you're putting into your body. People don't read the nutritional fact panel on products properly. Most people look at the calories, the protein, the sodium, the fat, the sugar. Very few people read the very, very fine print at the bottom, which is the ingredients. And when you see the ingredients, you realize it's a lot more chemicals. There's a lot more processed food and manufactured foods. And manufactured foods are foods not made by nature. It's made by somebody in a lab coat in a factory. So I call it fake foods, and people need to eat real holistic foods. there's a commercial from the 1970s with chiffon margarine. It's Mother Nature, and she says it's not nice to fool Mother Nature.
True.
Well, maybe we should heed those words of warning, because there's a lot of imitation plant-based fake meats, fake chicken, and people think it's healthier because it's plant-based. It's a myth. When they see the chemicals in there, you're better off eating the real beef and the real chicken. However, they've also poisoned, in my opinion, the chickens and the beef with the hormones and the special feeds. They're pumping the chickens with a lot of water and making them fatter because they make more profit on a bigger chicken. If you look at pictures of a chicken from the 1940s, it's about a fourth of the size of what chicken is today. So it's not natural. And again, it's not so much the food, it's what they're doing to the food.
So there's a lot of manipulation in our marketplace, isn't there?
Absolutely. If you look at a box of spaghetti, on the outside, on the front, it'll say 0 sodium, 0 fat, 0, this much protein. And you may look and say, oh, that looks healthy. Well, what it doesn't tell you, it's 44 grams of simple carbohydrates. And there's a difference between a simple carbohydrate and a complex carbohydrate. The simple carbohydrates are bad for you. Complex carbohydrates are good for you. So again, people aren't aware of what they're eating and they think it's healthy.
So how do people become a little bit more conscious of, what are some tips of helping them become more conscious? A, is their shopping, and also B, what they're putting in front of them?
Well, just realize what you're putting into your mouth. Become educated. Read the labels of the packaged goods that you're getting. If you're able to buy organic, buy organic. If you're not able to, then, an apple is better than nothing. People think orange juice is healthy for you. It's not. Yeah. The reason being, it takes 4 to 8 medium oranges to make 1 glass of orange juice. So my question is, would you eat 4 to 8 oranges at one time? Most people would say no, but that's how much sugar you're putting into your body at one time. Plus, they remove all the fiber, and if they add a little bit of pulp to it, it's still not enough. You're just better off eating an orange instead of drinking the orange juice.
Wow, and I've read that when they pasteurize something, they're actually sucking all the nutrients out of it. Is that true?
Absolutely. And then they fortify it. And again, what they fortify with is not made in nature. It's a chemical for, the vitamins they put back in. It's not quite the same. So your body's not able to absorb the vitamins and nutrients that it needs.
Wow.
So now we've also started moving towards, where I'm one of the people out there who can't eat dairy. And I always look at all these things as actually has been my savior in my life, right? So what you can't eat is my body can't deal with it. What do you think now with the almond milk and cashew milks and all of these things that are, and oat straw, whatever, that are coming in big time now, and people are everybody's changing their lives over from working, using these different products?
I used to think they were healthy, and I had been, using those myself. And then I went to a chiropractor and he questioned me about it and said, comes in a box, doesn't it? A package? I said, yeah. He goes, it's processed. He says, if it's processed, it's not healthy for you because it's not natural the way they're doing it. And he said, start reading the ingredients. So I just stopped using all that stuff myself. I don't eat cereals. It's all processed and manufactured. It's mostly sugar. People are like, well, what do you eat for breakfast? Well, I eat eggs. I eat avocados. I make oatmeal. I use steel cut oats, rolled oats. And people might say, well, that's boring. Well, I add ground cinnamon and chopped walnuts and some other, things to it. You can make the oatmeal by soaking it overnight, so you can eat it cold. You don't even have to cook it if you don't want to take the time. If you don't want to take time to cook eggs, make hard-boiled eggs and keep them in the refrigerator, and then it's ready to go. So there's a lot of things you can do. The biggest thing is most people aren't drinking enough water, and I'm talking about pure water. And the reason I say that is 75% of the U.S. population is chronically dehydrated, and that means they're not drinking enough water. Our bodies are 60 to 70% water. It's not soda or diet soda or fruit juice or fruit-flavored beverages. A lot of times when we think we're hungry, we're actually thirsty.
Yeah.
And there's a direct correlation to people being overweight and not drinking enough water. 72% of the U.S. adult population is overweight, of which 42% are clinically obese. So when you're looking at 72% of the U.S. adult population overweight and 75%, chronically dehydrated, there's a direct correlation that way. And again, the soda industry has manipulated the market with their diet sodas. And the reason I say that is I'll get in arguments and discussions with people who drink diet soda saying, how does it cause weight gain when it's 0 calories? Well, it has aspartame in it, and aspartame has 92 known side effects. And the reason it causes weight gain is it inhibits your body from absorbing vitamins and nutrients. So now your body's in starvation mode because you're not giving it the right fuel. And it also increases your cravings for sugar. So now you may be drinking the diet soda, but then you're going to go out and eat the candy bar or the ice cream or the cake or the cookies or donuts. So again, I'll watch people eat, a hot fudge sundae and have a diet soda and shake my head thinking, this is nuts. But that's what, people don't realize. They think, oh, it's 0 calories. And that's another myth, where people think, oh, calories in, calories out. Not all calories are created equal. For example, an apple is about 90 to 100 calories. However, it takes your body 25 calories to digest and process it. And it has a lot of phytonutrients and other nutritional benefits. A Hershey bar is about 125 calories, has no nutritional value, and takes your body 0 calories to process it. So you can eat a whole pint of blueberries and have about 100 calories as opposed to a Hershey bar.
Wow, that's crazy. I have a question too about my daughter has always been one that eats. She's never been a big eater. She eats like 7 or 8 small meals a day, even from the time she was little. And we would call it letting her graze, because she just makes something. But she's always stayed very thin. Is that healthy, or is that not something you would promote?
It all depends on the individual. We're all different. We're all unique. So for some people, grazing like your daughter is perfectly fine because that's how their body processes the food. For other people, may not be appropriate. Some people can go on 1 or 2 meals during the day and just drink water in between. So again, it's all what is best for your individual lifestyle and individual situation and your own body needs. The one thing I do advocate is to stop eating 3 hours before you go to sleep and do what we call an intermittent fast. So say, for example, you go to bed at 10 o'clock in the evening and you stop eating at 7 o'clock and you have your first meal at 10 or 11 in the morning. That's breakfast or to break the fast. Then you're going 12 to 14 hours, and that gives your body time to digest and process the food. And most people can do it. A lot of people will say, well, when I get up, I'm hungry. No, you're thirsty. So the first thing I do is drink a 20-ounce glass of water and rehydrate. And that helps you satisfy your appetite and keeps you from being hungry. And then I'll have a cup of black coffee. Sometimes I'll have some green tea. And then I'll have another glass of 20 ounces of water, maybe 15, 20 minutes later. So by 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, I've had 40 ounces of water and I'm feeling pretty full and satisfied.
Wow. And, I've noticed for me too, when you talk about water, and I don't think I drink enough either, even though I feel like I'm drinking it all the time. But if I'll start getting a headache and I can drink like 1 glass of cold, for me, it's cold water. And I notice that headache goes away. So is that dehydration also?
Yes, that's one of the signs of being dehydrated. And as you know, being in Arizona, a lot of people don't realize they're dehydrated because it's a dry heat most of the time. So people don't perspire or sweat, so they don't realize that they're losing the water through their skin. Where if you live in Florida like you do now, it's very humid. You walk outside and you start perspiring. So you start realizing how much water you're losing.
Yeah, I was not used to perspiring, David. It's okay. I like that dry heat a lot better. I call it glistening, though.
Yeah.
It's a good word.
So I talk about 9 golden rules of weight loss for people who love to eat. And I'm not a food purist by any stretch of the imagination. I still like a scoop of ice cream, a scoop versus a pint or a half gallon.
Yeah.
I like a slice of, pie every once in a while, but it's a sliver, not a full slice or a piece of cake. What used to last me one meal, one sitting for a piece of chocolate cake now goes 3 or 4, evenings. So again, I'm not telling people you have to deprive yourself and not enjoy. It's just doing it in smaller quantities. And if you eat it slower, you can enjoy it more. The other thing is a lot of people don't realize what they're doing to our food. It's a term called the bliss point, and it's a term coined by Howard Moskowitz, who worked for the food industry for 30 years. He's responsible for the Campbell's soups, the Prego sauces, the different varieties of Diet Pepper. And what they've done is they scientifically engineered the food to optimize our cravings, to enhance it so that we are always craving the fat, salt, sugar, and texture. So when they say bet you can't eat just one potato chip, it's not a dare, it's a fact. And
Oh,
they've
wow.
also found out that Oreo cookies are more addicting than cocaine.
Wow. Okay, well, I'm grateful that I have an allergy to chocolate, so that's never been since that's been found out. That's been my saving grace. So let's move over to you've gotten your body in great shape, and you did something that many people have always wanted to do. It's like that thing in your bucket list, climbing. Tell us about your climb. I
I
mean,
hiked Mount Kilimanjaro in June of 2022 at age 67. I met Anne Lorrimore, who set the world record at age 89 to climb to the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro. And so I thought, maybe I can set the record at age 90. So the first challenge is to get to age 90. And the second challenge is to be healthy enough to climb Kilimanjaro. So my motto is Kilimanjaro training never ends. And I thought, maybe I better start hiking Kilimanjaro to see what I'm getting myself into. So it was a great adventure. It was more difficult than what I thought when I was reading information on the internet about hiking Kilimanjaro. Don't always believe what you're reading. When people say it's not that steep, it is. When people say it's a gradual incline, it's not. It's either straight up or straight down. It's about 10% where it's a gradual incline or decline or even level. The biggest issue is the altitude. You can be in the best shape, but if your body doesn't respond well to altitude, you get altitude sickness. And there were 6 members in our group. One of the 21-year-olds got altitude sickness of day 3 out of day 8. So again, it doesn't matter about your age and it doesn't matter about your physical condition. There were actually 28 porters, and 2 of them had altitude sickness, and they had to stop. And they are used to going up and down it, many times.
and is that anything to do with being dehydrated at all?
One of the issues is being dehydrated. It's not always, but they do recommend when you're hiking that, especially Kilimanjaro at the higher altitudes, you have at least 5 liters of water. So we were required to carry 3 waters a liter in our camelbacks in the backpack, and also have another liter of water on the side and drink it during the whole day. And a lot of our food was porridges to get more water into us. And they'd always give us what they call the coffee or tea break or hot chocolate.
I
So
hope you went back to that doctor and told him what you did.
I did. I actually sent him, I brought him a photo book of the pictures that we took up on Kilimanjaro, and he was against me going. He says because of my age that I should reconsider, and because having heart issues. I was fortunate to avoid the heart attack. Some of my colleagues and peers in my age group haven't been so fortunate. They've had the heart attacks. A couple of them recovered. One is still recovering. The other thing is you got to be careful with your doctor. Medical doctors are important, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea. However, I went to my doctor before the hike up Kilimanjaro. The cardiologist cleared me, and the PA came in and said, "You should be on this medication, that medication." And I said, "Why?" And she says, well, you're over 62 and they recommend it. I said, who recommends it? And she says, well, the pharmaceuticals. I said, I don't care. I'm not taking that stuff. If I don't need it, why would I take it? And then she started arguing I shouldn't be climbing Kilimanjaro because of my age. So I said, look, I'm hiking 5 to 6 miles a day in the White Tank Mountains. I'm climbing the steps of Verrado, which is 344 railroad ties straight up. I said, why don't you come out and hike with me? And then you can tell me if you want me to go or not to go. So again, people are judging you because of your age without looking at the whole person. My wife stalker is just the opposite. She doesn't believe in, the pharmaceuticals, and she's a naturopathic doctor with an MD combined. So she does more things that are natural. Now, medication is important for a lot of people, and I'm not advocating not taking it. I'm just saying be careful why you're taking it.
No, I agree with you totally on that. My dad is 83, and he was out here at my house like 2 weeks ago, and he power washed my house. But he's really good. He goes to the doctor about every 6 months just for his checkup, and they always ask him, what medications are you on? And he says, I'm not on any. And they look at him, they're like, are you sure? Yes, I'm very sure. And his, like you talk about, his diet is amazing. I mean, the oatmeal and small meals and it's just, he says the one thing you have to keep doing is you have to keep moving and have a good sense of humor. He says, because you're going to laugh at yourself a lot at this age. So those are his rules for healthy living. And he stays away from all pharmaceuticals like you're talking about. So
I agree 100%.
I do too.
Yeah. If you can find things that, there's natural things that will help deal with, whether it is blood pressure, but maybe the blood pressure is because you're not dealing with some issues that you're holding down. There's so many reasons why. So it's really important to delve in and really understand yourself and ask questions, just because you go to a doctor or whatever, you're allowed to ask questions, and you're allowed to ask if there's a different way or a better way to deal with, if you're having some circumstances in your life that you have to deal with.
Yeah, there's some statistics I just learned about that were alarming. If you're over age 50, there's an 80% probability you're either a type 2 diabetic or pre-diabetic. 93 million Americans are pre-diabetic, and 8 out of 10, 80% of them don't even realize it or know it. And type 2 diabetes is preventable. It's also reversible. So imagine 80% of people over the age of 50 are a type 2 diabetic. And if you're a pre-diabetic, what that means is if you do not change your lifestyle and eating habits, in 7 years, you'll be a full-blown type 2 diabetic. I was talking to one client. We were at a networking event before COVID, and he ordered a hamburger and fries and a cup of coffee. And he started putting ketchup on his fries and hamburger. And he told me he was just in the hospital for his diabetes the week before. And I asked him, I said, why are you putting ketchup on your, fries and eating fries to begin with in a hamburger? And he says, well, what's wrong with ketchup? I said, it's all sugar, 60% sugar. He wasn't aware of it. Then he was adding the artificial creamer to his coffee. I said, do you know what's in there? He goes, no. I said, well, I'll tell you what's in there. It's nothing healthy because I can read the fine print. And so I read to him what was in there. He doesn't know what he's doing. And that's unfortunate because that's what most Americans and most people don't realize what they're putting into their bodies because of habit. A lot of times we're doing things because that's how we were taught. My friend John Canada calls it dietary duplication. And there's a story I like to talk about called the pot roast story. A lot of people are familiar with it, where a lady is hosting a dinner and she makes a pot roast. And one of the guests says, this is delicious. Can I get the recipe? And the host says, of course. So she writes it down, gives it to the guest. The guest looks it over and says, why do you cut the ends of the pot roast off before you cook it? And the host says, I don't know. That's how my mom taught me. So the host calls her mom the next day and says, hey, Mom, why do we cut the ends of the pot roast off before we cook it? And her mom says, I don't know. That's how your grandmother taught me. Call your grandmother. So she calls her grandmother, and the grandmother thinks for a minute and says, oh, because when I was first married, the pot I had was too small to fit the pot roast, so I had to cut the ends off.
We don't even question, do we?
No, and there's certain things that we do that we don't even realize. So why do you put certain, toppings on your pizza? Why do you eat a certain time or a certain way, or prepare a special holiday meal a certain way? Again, that's how we were taught. That's what we were doing. My wife and I get into discussions all the time because she grew up in Nebraska and I grew up in the Chicago area, and I eat a certain way and she eats a certain way. And it's completely different. So she's like, "Why don't you like it this way?" And I said, "Because I don't. That's how I was raised."
Yeah, exactly. And another question I have now that we're talking about food, with all the chemicals out there and how they're manipulating some of our foods, do you think it's harder than ever to really stay healthy just by eating? I mean, I know some of the things that I see, no longer have seeds, which means they've been genetically modified. I know that our soil is not as rich as it used to be, where, things taste different to me. I took my kids to Carlsbad one year and let them pick strawberries out of a field there. They'd never tasted a strawberry like that. What do you think about that? Is it harder than ever to stay healthy through just eating?
It is. The nutritional density is down between 30 and 40% from what it was when our parents and grandparents were growing up.
Wow.
Again, it's what they're doing to the food. Most corn is genetically modified now. In Mexico, they grow a lot of unmodified corn, and they're getting upset because that's one of their big staples, that it's being more genetically modified. It's sad. I mean, they'll spray. You'll see the pictures of people in gas masks and protective gear spraying the food, yet they think it's okay for us to eat it and ingest it. That makes no sense. So it is more difficult to get a lot of nutritional benefits from the food. So I do recommend supplements. I won't name any because I don't want to promote anything, but I do take supplements. I do encourage people to do it. I just tell people to make sure that they know the source and that it's from organic sources and that it's, processed a certain way. So just be careful. And just because it's more expensive doesn't mean it's better.
Okay. How did you learn all this? Is this just research that you've done since you were 61 years old and took it so seriously? Because this is some really good stuff you're talking about. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of all of these things. So how did you learn about this? What got you started on this journey to learn?
Well, actually, it started in my 20s and 30s. I was fit and trim when I was in my 20s and 30s. I was, eating healthy. I was a vegetarian for 10 years. Had a boss who told me, be careful making exceptions to the rule because those exceptions tend to become the rule. And of 10 years of not eating any refined sugar and no red meat, I started dating someone who was a chocoholic and started eating M&Ms again. And, life gets in the way when you have family obligations and work responsibilities. And before I realized it, the weight had crept up on me. If you gain 5 pounds a year, it may not seem like a lot, but after 10 years, that's 50 pounds. And so, again, that's what was happening to me. I won't touch M&Ms now or Hershey bars or Snickers or Pringles potato chips because I'm addicted to them. And I know I treat myself like an alcoholic, that if I start and have one drink, I won't stop. I'm not an alcoholic, but I treat the food that way.
But so I agree with you 100% because you know what? I have a thing of, first of all, I think that our world, we're too instamatic. Everybody is, they're lazy in the ways of, they spend the time in areas that they don't need to, but they don't spend the time in areas that they would actually make them healthier and happier. But the actual fact of being able to, well, I believe, of cooking in larger amounts, and then you can actually store your food so you can have more of that later on. And, shopping is a lot easier when you know what to do. But learning these type of incredible habits only produces us that when we're at this point in our lives, and I understand I'm now in my 60s, and when the last time I went for a checkup when I had I had a fall, and I didn't even take I didn't even take any painkillers because I didn't want to fill my body with that.
Yeah.
So being able to see yourself in a different light because, t- trying something that's good for you instead of, like I remember I'm the type of mom that made 3 different meals for my kids for dinners. And at some points I didn't, but it's coming to a point in life now where we need to start really focusing on what the importance is in our life, and we have to realize that health is number one.
Yeah, you bring a good point, Glenda. Focus on what you want rather than what you don't want, because what you focus on expands. So what I tell people is focus on the foods you enjoy that are healthy for you, as opposed to the foods that you should avoid that you don't want to eat. So if you're telling yourself, "Oh, I'm sacrificing or depriving myself because I'm not going to have the potato chips or the pretzels or the ice cream or the soda," it's no, you're not depriving yourself or making a sacrifice. You're making a healthy choice. So focus on eating the apple or the cherries or blueberries or strawberries or raspberries or the apple, the pears. There's so many fruits out there and berries that people enjoy. So again, look forward to that and focus on that. The other thing is people get confused with carbohydrates. There's simple carbohydrates, which are not good for you. And then there's the complex carbohydrates, which are very healthy and very beneficial for you. So I tell people, if you like bread, look at the Ezekiel bread. It's not made from flour, it's sprouted and it's grains. So it's healthier. Plus, you need to either keep it frozen or refrigerated because it's a live food. And after a couple of weeks, it'll spoil. Where if you buy the store-bought bread that's on the shelf, you can wait 6 months and open it. It'll be just as fresh as the day you bought it because of all the preservatives in it.
That's really scary.
That's chemicals. Yeah.
Chemicals. And again, if you look at the ingredients they put in there to make it, they have to keep it on the store shelf to keep it longer life. So that's what they do to it.
That's really scary. But, I can remember sometimes I would help my daughter clean her car and there would be like French fries down on the ground where she would be eating those. I'm like, these still look like these could be, edible. And that's like a couple weeks later. So I can't even imagine what is actually in some of our fast food. I don't eat it anymore, very, very rarely. But, I know some people, that's their staple is breakfast through McDonald's, some lunch like that. And then because we've become kind of a complacent society and we want that quick fix, we're going to run through another fast food place or call out for pizza.
Yeah. Or Starbucks. I mean, some of those food drinks, I call them, have 40, 50, 60 grams of sugar in them. If you're a female, you only need about 25 to 30 grams of sugar a day. If you're a male, about 25, 30, 35 grams of sugar. And it should be a natural sugar, not a refined sugar. And those drinks have double what you need. Some people are having 2 or 3 of those drinks in one day, and that's why we're getting fatter.
We're also dealing with cancers because when you're eating all of that too, cancers, that's what cancer feeds off of, all this.
The sugar, yeah.
Sugars.
That's scary.
Yeah. In the 1960s, the average male weighed 162 pounds. Today, the average male weighs about 192 pounds. And the average female weighed about 142 pounds. Now they weigh about 168 pounds. Almost 30 pounds difference. So what's happening is people see people who are heavier than they are, so they think that they're better and thinner when they're both overweight. And so the new normal has shifted. Our perceptions have shifted. And you mentioned it also earlier with the kids getting heavier and fatter. A friend of mine was going to his 50th class reunion, was going through his yearbook, and his kids said, "Hey, Dad, can we go through those pictures again?" And the kids said, "Hey, there's no fat kids in your class." And so I looked through my yearbook, and when I was growing up, there were very few kids, maybe 1 or 2 that were overweight, not fat. But today, there's a prevalent number of kids that are significantly overweight, and a lot of it has to do with they've taken away the PE, physical education, and recess and getting outdoors and exercising. Our kids are spending more time on the computers or their
Games.
iPhones, or
Yeah.
the tablets. And what I tell people is, do some physical activity. It doesn't have to be exercise per se, but Rebel Wilson lost 77 pounds in a year simply by walking an hour each day. And I get pushback where people say, I don't have an hour to walk each day. Okay, well, Mindy Callis lost weight, and she would do walks 10 or 15 minutes at a time. So what she said is when she had a 10 or 15-minute break, instead of being on social media or texting friends, she would go for a walk. Well, if you do a 10 or 15-minute walk 4 or 5 times a day throughout the day,
It
you
adds
get
up.
40 to 60 minutes throughout the day, and that's better.
Oh, no doubt about it. So I wanted to hit on one point that I know that I went through at one point in my life, because I had been somebody who was, as a young adult, I was at that chunky point in life, and I've been one of the few that I'm grateful for that have kept it off for all of my life. But there's one thing that really hurts people is because when you lose the weight, the other problem is we don't see ourselves that other version that we turn into. How do you find, like, how do we deal with that image? Because you look in the mirror and you still think yourself is feeling fat and all the rest of it. And what happens is if they're feeling that way, then that's their turn off of trying to work on themselves, and they're turned on to feeling like they're not getting where they need to be.
Well, I have that issue also. I keep a picture of what I used to look like in front of me to remind me how fat I looked and how heavy I was and how good I look now. I also have a lot more energy now, so I don't take naps in the afternoon. I have more mental clarity and more cognitive ability. I got rid of the brain fog simply by eliminating a lot of the processed foods, eliminating the sugary foods, the M&Ms, the Pringles potato chips, the Hershey bars. I stopped going through McDonald's drive-thrus, because it was convenient. Just little things. I remember there's certain triggers you have to be aware of. So, for example, when I would go to a Walgreens, I would always like to get a chunky bar because that was one of my favorites, and Walgreens carries them. So anytime I went to Walgreens, like, oh, I'll buy a chunky bar. Not a big deal. It is a big deal. So
Yeah.
now I make sure I don't even go by the candy aisle. And if I do, I just remind myself, no, I don't need it and I don't want it. So it's a constant battle of being consciously aware of what you're doing and being aware of the triggers and working on those issues. And that's what is important to realize is, first, realize what the triggers are, and second, how to handle those triggers.
Yeah, it's so important because it's probably, I think, one of the hardest things to do because there's food all around us at all times. But if we never let our bodies get to the point where we're really hungry, like from day one, I've since learning is I always keep vegetables in the fridge, right? So when years ago when I was hungry, I would grab crackers. That was my go-to when I was making dinner. Well, now I wouldn't even think of that. Now I would rather grab a carrot or something like that. So it fills me. And the other part is the crunchiness, right? So it allows my body to feel that there's food going into me. So it's a total mindset.
Yeah. When they're in seasons, cherries are great because it's a finger food and you have to eat them slow because of the pits. And it's low glycemic as opposed to high glycemic. So it takes the sugar longer to digest and process. So it's healthier for you. It has a lot of nutritional benefits, which is better than the M&Ms. I'm like you. I keep apples in the refrigerator, avocados. It's just easy for me to slice an avocado in half and just eat it right out of the shell.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people like to make guacamole out and add all the stuff to it. Then they have to have the chips so they can eat the guacamole. And then it defeats the purpose.
So are you one who looks at the GI of the, seeing what the levels are in foods? Do you look at that as well when you're looking through dieting?
No, not really. The way I look at it is if you eat for your health, your weight loss journey will take care of itself. And the other thing is a lot of entrepreneurs and business people, a lot of times we'll sacrifice our health in chasing our wealth. And then when we're older, we're spending our wealth chasing our health. So there's needs to be a good balance between the two.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And today I was going over your book again, and you talk about the 9 fundamental must-haves. Is that something you learned from your journey, or is it just something that made sense to you, or how did you come up with all of these? Just common sense?
Yeah, it was more.
You seem to have, David. So
it was, like I said, reading the books from the 1970s, which are more relevant today than the books that are out there from current authors. A lot of the current authors are medical doctors or people who lost weight and did a certain way, and not one size fits all. So it is based on common sense, and then it just looked real simple to me. It made sense. I mean, I changed it for the next book, but basically it's drink water because our bodies are 60 to 70% water. Avoid processed and manufactured foods. I call them fake foods. Eat real holistic whole foods. The average person, they base our daily dietary intake on 2,000 calories per day. We don't need 2,000 calories a day. We only need between 1,250 and 1,750. It depends if you're doing a lot of physical activity, or if you're a pregnant woman, then you need more calories. It all depends on your individual situation. The average American will consume 3,600 calories per day. And that's almost double of what you really need, and more than what the recommended amount is. So people aren't aware of that. Eat slowly. We talked about that, so you can enjoy the food. Eat small portions. Again, if you eat slower, you'll eat smaller portions. Get adequate sleep. You need at least 7 to 8 hours of quality sleep. A lot of people don't get it because they have the TVs in their bedroom, their phones, their tablets. So remove all that stuff and get good quality sleep. The other thing is give your body time to digest the food. So, stop eating 3 hours before you go to bed. Go at least 12 to 14 hours between your last meal and your first meal in the morning. Think positive. 80% of our thoughts are negative. Imagine if you turn it around, made it 80% positive. I do a lot of research. I do a lot of reading. And so I'm always sifting through. As a lawyer, I learned how to figure out between the fact, the opinion, and just, the false information out there. And then the last one is to be physically active. I recommend walking because most people, if you're upright and physically can walk, and start slow. You don't have to, just maybe walk 5 or 10 minutes. And then, it's not a race. Just, it doesn't have to be a brisk walk. Doesn't have to be up an incline. Doesn't have to be, intense. Just move.
Yeah.
And that's it. If you just
Great
do
advice.
9 simple things, again, it's all things we all know what to do. We just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes also helps to have an accountability buddy with you, so that, when you don't feel like doing, or if you're falling off the wagon or you don't want to go for a walk, you can phone that person and they'll just push you into it, or speak to those wise words that you need to hear at that moment in time.
Oh, that's fantastic. You give great advice, Glenda. And they found in research that people who have an accountability partner will have a 90% to 95% success rate. And when you're on a weight loss journey, your accountability partner doesn't need to be on the same weight loss journey. They don't even need to know what you're doing. Here's a real easy way to do an accountability call. It's based on what I learned from Darren Hardy. You set up the time, should only take about 5 minutes, and you say what you're going to do for the week. And then the follow-up is, did you do what you said you're going to do? If not, what did you learn from it, and what are you going to do to improve it? There's no excuses of why you didn't do it. Either you did or you didn't. If you didn't do it, what are you going to do to improve? What did you learn from not doing it, and how will that move you forward? And that's all the accountability partner needs to ask you. And that's it. Real simple. What are you going to do? Did you do it? If not, what are you going to do to improve? And what did you learn from it? So the other thing is, Darren Hardy talks about wine, cheesecake, and hamburger, or cheeseburgers. And it gives the example that you're at a barbecue and the host is making your favorite burgers with the special meat and the favorite cheese, and the buns are homemade, and your favorite condiments, and they offer you one. What are you going to do if you're watching your diet? You're restricted. Well, most people would say, I'll eat it because it's going to be good. Well, in this case, you're a vegetarian, so you don't eat meat. So the answer is no, thank you. Same thing with wine. You're at the same barbecue and they have your favorite wine, and the host or hostess offers you a glass. And what do? Well, most people would say, okay, I'll have a glass of wine or drink a little bit. Well, in this case, you're pregnant because you're female. So the answer is no, thank you, because you don't drink wine or alcohol, when most pregnant women don't, because they know it's not healthy for the baby. So you don't do it. So let's say you're at a wedding and they have a renowned baker who's making this incredible wedding cake, and everybody's oohing and eyeing how good it tastes, and they offer you a piece. Do you accept it? Well, most people would. However, this cake has nuts in it, and you're extremely allergic to nuts, so you're not able to eat it because there is no alternative. So I think of the acronym TINA, which stands for there is no alternative.
I like that.
Yeah, Susan Pierce Thompson wrote a book called Bright Line Dieting, and she talks about bright line, which is a rule that you just don't cross. It's a line. And so just make certain rules for yourself that you're not going to do certain things, but don't make it so restrictive that you're going to be miserable. Just, certain things like, I'm not going to drink soda or diet soda. I haven't had a soda since July of 2016.
Wow.
How about soda water?
Pardon?
How about soda water?
It depends. As long as it's plain, it's okay. I know people drink seltzer water or carbonated water. There's different views whether it's healthy or not. If you ask one expert, they'll say it's okay. If you ask another expert, they'll tell you it's not okay. Same thing with pure water. Paul Bragg advocated drinking distilled water and avoiding spring water. Jack LaLanne, his student, the godfather of fitness, said, no, drink spring water and avoid distilled water. So you have two different experts advocating two different things. So what I tell people is do what you like to drink and what you find best for your body. Yeah. And then the third alternative is reverse osmosis with a 6-stage filtering system. And that's what I do. I used to drink distilled water, and I switched that because of COVID, distilled water got very expensive.
Mm.
Wow. You are just a wealth of information, and I'm so glad that we got to connect today, and hopefully, people that are watching us have time now to maybe think a little bit more of, what is this shortcome that we do, so we go through the fast food areas and all the rest to live on. Is that really the shortcut? That's a shortcut, in my opinion, to end the life.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not looking just to extend my life. I'm looking to extend the quality of my life. And that's when people say, what do you wish for? Most people, if you ask them, they'll say the most important thing to them is their health, but they do the least to keep good health. For me, my wish is not only to have good physical health and mental health, but also, the mental cognitive ability to go with it, for a long period of time. So I wish for both things.
I agree.
Absolutely. And, for me, I had my kids when I was much older. So I've got a 28-year-old and I still have a 20-year-old. And to me, as I look down the line there, I don't want them pushing me in a wheelchair. I don't want them to have to wait for me to catch up with them someplace, or I don't want to be bedridden and say, I can't go. So for me, what you're talking about is probably the most important thing there is staying healthy. You're having your mind, having your faculties about you. And for me, there's just no other way to live, David. You've really enlightened me a lot, especially on those carbohydrates. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The other thing is being healthy and having your cognitive abilities, that gives you freedom. Mm-hmm. Like you said, you don't have to rely on anybody. You don't have to go into independent living or assisted living. My mom, thank God, is still alive. She's 89 and she lives in her own house and still drives, and she's active. Wow. And so I have an aunt that's 95, so there's longevity.
Wow.
So, again, a lot of people say, "Oh, I have bad genes." No, it's not bad genes per se. It's what we've done to our bodies. And Dr. Bob Martin, I think Jim Rome also, I'm not sure which one it is, but they would say, if you wear out the body you live in now, where else are you going to live?
Yeah, very true.
So
Very true.
before, I have to be the bearer of bad news. This has to be ending. Before we end, though, can you tell people how to find you?
Sure. They can go to my website, which is iamthinning.com. It's iamthinning.com. They can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. Just put up my name, David Medansky. The last name is spelled Medansky, like 3 words, me, Dan, and Sky. My book, Break the Chains of Dieting, is available on Amazon. It's been recommended and endorsed by Jack Canfield, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. Forbes Riley, our good friend, has also recommended, endorsed it. And above all else, I just wish everybody good health.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this. And for anybody watching, we will put links down for you so you can find David a little easier. And just remember, your health is definitely your wealth. Take care, everybody. Thanks for watching.